The following video contains strong sexual content and is rated M for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised. Our advice? Don't get caught.
Hello, fellow rebel patriots. I hope everybody's doing well. It's me, Bobby Bones, back in the studio again. This video is about the First Amendment. And, I've really gone back and forth on what I wanted to do. And, you've probably already heard every single pundit or person out there giving their perspective and this, that, the other, what's right, what's wrong, what's acceptable, what's not. And the truth of the matter is that neither side actually goes into what's in the First Amendment, right? And what's protected and what's really not protected. And that's what I wanted to do on this program, is to go into that. Now, just to kind of give a baseline here, of course, nobody deserves to die for their speech, right? And at the same token, the government should not be bringing down the hammer of the government against an individual for speaking out against that government, right? No matter if the person's popular or not, right? It's up to the market. The marketplace of ideas is what's supposed to be in control of who's being viewed and who's being listened to, right? And it's those best ideas in marketplace. It's the marketplace that is going to figure this out, not the government, right? And so most people don't know this, okay, about the First Amendment, but there are actually 5 elements to the First Amendment, okay? And this is something that you're not hearing on CNN, MSNBC. You're not seeing people on Facebook or X talk about it. I am giving a libertarian perspective, right? And so I want as much individual liberty as possible. And so in order for me to spread the word of liberty, my job is to kind of educate people on what it is that's in the First Amendment and why it is so important and why it's number one. So we have 5 elements to the First Amendment. And the first element is the freedom of religion, right? And what it does is it prevents government from establishing a religion preferring one religion over another. So meaning that the federal government cannot come in and force a religion on you, right? That you have the freedom to decide for yourself if you want to be an atheist, if you want to be a Jew, if you want to be a Catholic, a born again, right? That is your choice. And government should not be forcing you, okay, to pick a religion, right? That the government also cannot punish you for practicing your religion, okay? So that's another important, which is called the Free Exercise Clause. And what that does is it protects you as the individual from persecution if you want to practice your religion. Like right now I'm drinking a coffee from Dunkin' Donuts. They're not a sponsor of mine, but if I wanted to pray to this Dunkin' Donuts coffee, and let's say I could convince people voluntarily to join me in praying for this cup of coffee, right? This will become our new God. The government cannot stop us from doing that, right? That it is our right to pray to whatever we want to pray to, right? Allah, Jesus Christ, whoever, right? So that is the first element of the First Amendment. The second element is freedom of speech. This protects your right to express ideas and inform them freely without government censorship or punishment. Now think about what I just said, right? That you have the right to give your perspective, your ideas, right? And not only spoken words, but also symbolic words, right? Like holding up a sign or such as flag burning, right? Now, this was a big issue that just came up. It always comes up every so often, but recently Trump had signed an executive order, but he didn't really make it about burning flags. It was really like, hey, if you're burning a flag and then like a riot happens because of the burning of the flag, that then you could be prosecuted. But again, the flag is property. It's a symbol, right? The government doesn't own your American flag, right? I have an American flag on my front porch. I would never burn it. As a matter of fact, I get very angry when I see people disrespect flag laws, right? How they dispose of a flag, right? They turn it upside down just because they're mad because the government did something, but it's completely goes against the flag laws of, you know, why what is the purpose of putting a flag upside down? Now, they have the right to put their flag upside down no matter how ridiculous it is. Okay? And somebody has the right to burn a flag, right? But the government is supposed to protect those rights, even the most repugnant rights, okay, like that, like burning of the flag or disrespecting the flag and how you dispose of it. And how to speak freely, right? So we just had the thing with Jimmy Kimmel. And you know, again, he's not some big hero for free speech, right? I mean, he's certainly not. He's definitely picked his battles on who should speak and who shouldn't in the past, especially regarding COVID. But again, even though I disagree with Jimmy Kimmel, right, I still would protect his rights to say what he says. Same thing with the president. A lot of the things the president says, I completely disavow. But I would still protect his rights to say what he says, okay? Because he has a right to his speech. And the government should not be punishing people for that. Now, let's get into the third element, the freedom of the press. This protects the rights of newspapers, magazines, books, the internet, right? Like if you want to publish something on Facebook, a lot of people don't even understand that they are the press, right? If you're on your, let's say you're on your laptop or your cell phone, and you are reporting the news, right? You are essentially the press, right? You might not consider yourself the press, but you are. And, you know, people are like, well, do you have a license to be the press? No, it's an inherent right under the Constitution that you have the right to be the press. And you also have the right to give the information in your perspective, right? You have a right to lie, right? If I could put out a news story, it could be a complete liar. Now, here's the thing. We're going to go back to people voluntarily watching, right? People voluntarily clicking or liking my stuff. If I put out a lot of bogus stuff, then what's going to happen is nobody's going to watch, right? Or if I put out things that are unfavorable, right? Things that are maybe objectionable, right? Chances are people aren't going to tune in, right? Unless somebody's looking for that sort of thing, okay? So again, we have the freedom of press. And me, as now a journalist, apparently, you know, there are certain protections that we all have when we put stuff out there. And the thing, like we can go back to COVID, the thing that was so objectionable about what happened during that time was when the government under Joe Biden was pressuring X, Facebook, Instagram, to throw people off their platforms for saying their opinion or even just lying, right? See, you have the right to lie too. Now, you'll see people on the left say, yeah, but those were private companies making private decisions. Would have they made those decisions had the government not pressured them? It's the same thing as Jimmy Kimmel, only in reverse, right? And so I have a problem, in my opinion, with both parties when it comes to the First Amendment, because it seems like people on both sides like to pick and choose who gets to have what rights. And under a libertarian perspective, each side gets to have equal and fair justice, right? Just because you're a liberal or you're a conservative, you don't get extra rights, right? Just like if you're gay, lesbian, queer, black, right? You're Mexican, whatever you are, Jewish, right? Catholic, you don't get extra rights just because you fit into a new box, right? Just because you fit in some thing, right? You don't get extra rights for being a teacher, right? You don't get extra rights for being a fireman, right? You don't get extra rights for being a janitor or in Congress, right? We're supposed to be equal under the eyes of the law. And this is part of the problem that we have with, that libertarians have with government, is that they tend to write laws that they don't have to live under themselves. And that's why we reject a lot of the laws that Republicans and Democrats put out, because they don't have to live under the same laws that we do, right? And so just that alone, most of what government does, in my opinion, is unconstitutional, right? And so now we go into freedom of assembly. And freedom of assembly is citizens having the right to gather peacefully in groups for social, economic, or political or religious purposes, right? This protects activities like protests, parades, and other demonstrations. And here's the thing. Yeah, we have a right to go out in the street and protest. What we don't have a right to do is pick up a rock and throw it and hit somebody's private establishment, right? We don't have a right to burn down cities, right? We don't have a right to, as we're protesting, flipping cop cars and doing all this stuff. On the other hand, the government doesn't have a right to sit there and beat in people's brains and shoot tear gas at them just because people are protesting peacefully, right? If you're protesting peacefully, the government should be there not as a weapon against you. They should be there to protect your rights, right? And far too often, we see on both sides, right? We see protesters act badly, and then we see law enforcement act badly, right? And from a libertarian perspective, we reject both of that, right? I've been saying for years, the biggest enemy of a police officer is a bad cop, right? Because that cop gets other officers killed, right? Just as agitators and people who are committing crimes, right? Because we have to separate a lawful protest, right? Lawfully protest, and I have my sign, I'm out there, I'm protesting, versus committing a crime, right? You don't have a right to commit a crime, right? And so people think that libertarians are lawless. We're not lawless. We're actually pro-law, right? We're pro-law under the Constitution. What we're not is pro-tyrannical law, right? Where the government oversteps its reach to stop people from, burning their own property or praying, being an atheist, being a Jew, right? You have those rights protected under the Constitution. And then the last, fifth element, right? So that was the fourth element. Now the fifth element is the freedom to petition. This right ensures that people can ask the government to correct a wrong or address a grievance. This could be done through various means, including lawsuits, emails, collecting signatures for official petitions. So what that means is if the government does something wrong to me, I have the right to sue it, right? And we see this all the time, right? We see people suing the government all the time. A lot of times you could see it with a traffic stop, or you could see it maybe the government infringed your rights in some other way, right? Look at the administration. Obama's been sued, Bush has been sued, Biden's been sued, Trump has been sued, right? And so citizens have the right, if you think that the government is infringing on your constitutional rights, you have a right to sue the government. And you have the right to email your government. You have the right to mail your government. Like I sent letters I sent letters to the Bush administration, Obama administration, the Trump administration. I did not send letters to the Biden administration. Not because of anything in particular. I just, during that time with COVID and everything going on, it just seemed kind of useless to me. But you have that right. Like I have a right to send a letter to whoever I want in the government and petition them. Now, I wanted to go over this stuff because, nobody out there is talking about the 5 elements of the First Amendment. And I think it's important that we educate each other, that we share this information. And so I've done 2 videos this week on this topic. And I didn't like either video because what would happen is I would make a video, then I'd turn on the TV and I'd watch these guys go back and forth. And I'm like, I just didn't like either video that I made. Right. And I said, man, I don't want to be like these people. Right. And so what's the solution? So you say, Bobby, well, what's the solution to all this? Well, the solution is get government out of the way. Right. All of these problems come from government. Right. So when you think about individuals, right, because I hear a lot of this, individuals being radicalized. Well, who are they being radicalized by? The government, right? Both parties, right? You don't see a lot of libertarians going out there violating other people's rights and shooting people. Why? Because we believe in the sanctity of life, the sanctity of free choice, and the sanctity of individual liberty, right? You have the right to live your life as you please, as long as you are not infringing on the rights of your neighbors. A lot of the discussions that I hear come from each side in their perspective, right? On how when they violate rights, that they're morally justified. Both sides take that sort of tact, and I wanted to just lay the law out just as it is. And yeah, I reject the FCC. I would abolish it. I don't think the government has the right, first off, to even own airwaves. I think that should be a private, under private control. I think the free market of ideas and voluntary actions would solve a lot of this trouble, right? If you don't like something, change it, right? You don't need the government to protect you, right? From bad words or bad speech, right? Or bad visuals, right? You're an adult. And let's say if you have children, you can monitor that stuff. What? You can't raise your own kids and make your own decisions, right? For your own family? You need government to do that? That's ridiculous. Now, if something is morally reprehensible, right? Don't have it in your life, right? Nobody's forcing you to believe what somebody is saying or what somebody is doing, right? You're not being forced to do that. And the government should not be coming between you and being exposed to information. I made this comment, I believe last week, where never before in history have people had so much information at their fingertips and yet been so ignorant, right? And so that's what this platform is for. And again, just because I disagree with Republicans and Democrats don't mean that I disagree with them on everything. There are things I agree with Democrats. There are things I agree with Republicans. A lot of stuff. Libertarian views cross over in both parties. But I reject whenever they attack each side, because whenever they attack each side, especially when it comes to like speech or having the government infringe on people's individual liberties, you're also taking us out, right? Us independents, libertarians, constitutionalists. And so, yeah, we have to call that out. And so if you believe in choice, right, and you believe in voluntary actions, right, and you believe that you can control your own life, right, then you need to vote for people and put people in office that will protect those rights, right? And not just give you a slogan, right? That will actually stand up for the 5 elements of the First Amendment. So, anyway, I wanted to come on. I wanted to give you my perspective. If you are even 1% more educated from this film, from this video, please subscribe. Give me a like, right? Let's get this out there, okay? And like I said, I want to get out there. I'm going to talk to Republicans. I'm going to talk to Democrats. And I want to have constructive conversations with people, okay? And I don't want the government getting in between those constructive conversations. Anyway, hope everybody has a good rest of the week. I love you. Take care. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share. If you're not on my X, go to x.com/BrewMedia, right? And please follow me there. I put out a lot of really good news and information on there. And that page is growing constantly. And I hope to see you on the next one. Thank you again, my Rebel Patriots. And I'll see you on the next one. God bless. Take care.